Okay, so we left off with email encryption, or SMIME, right? That's one of those public key encryption standards for encrypting and digitally signing emails. Okay, so now continuing with sensitive data encryption. So organizations, as you know, need also to encrypt data at rest, right? It's not just data in motion, which means that any data not moving through the network or being used by the operating system. So the term usually refers to data stored on workstations, or stored on servers, or stored on smartphones, even stored in removable drives, backup media, or laptops. So as security testers, we want to consider data in motion, or DIM, DAR, which is data at rest, DUI, data in use, and even I would say data in the cloud should be considered. One of the tools that I like personally is BitLocker on desktop, on laptops. BitLocker uses the symmetric encryption algorithm known as AES, the AES algorithm, to secure hard drives. So frankly, once you shut down a laptop, BitLocker, using the TPM chip, secures that hard drive, and so that the data can't be used or stolen. Now, Now moving to hashing algorithms for a moment. Hashing algorithm is a function that takes this bearable length string or message, and it produces a fixed length hash value, and we call that the message digest, right? And this message digest is used to verify integrity of the data or message. So hashing or message digest is used to meet the I, or integrity, of CIA, which is really, remember, I always started out, encryption is all about. It's all about CIA and non-repudiation as its goals. So in a sense, a hashing algorithm is like a fingerprint of a message, right? And so two different messages producing the same hash value, super rare, right? But it's possible, and that's called collision, right? And so, therefore, a good hashing algorithm is one that is resistant to collisions. Now, hashing algorithms, just a little bit more. The modern systems are rapidly upgrading, right, to stay ahead of security needs. And so SHA-2, right, secure hashing algorithm, SHA-2 was the standard. Now SHA-3 is becoming a standard. Major web browsers really no longer use SHA-1. If you're using SHA-1, even as recently as 2020, get rid of it, right? And move your company to SHA-2 or SHA-3. Now, federal agencies have been instructed by NIST to actually remove all of SHA-1. So sometimes you're a company that complies with NIST standards as a chosen foundation. You want to remove SHA-1, right? So NIST is started this whole process out by now. It started out with a contest, these hashing algorithms, to replace SHA, instead of just increasing the digest length, which was one option that they could certainly have chosen. Now, to understand PKI, or public key infrastructure, PKI isn't an algorithm. It's actually a structure for encrypting the data. So it's another way of that authentication, in addition to encryption, it's another way authentication can take place over this communication channel by using these certificates, these PKI certificates. And so a certificate is a digital document that verifies that the two parties exchanging over the internet are really who they claim to be, right? And so they follow the X.509 standard that describes creating a certificate and what goes into a certificate, which it would include the thumbprint, would include the certification authority, would include the entity. So like myself on a personal work computer would be the entity, right? The algorithm itself, those sort of things, the public key. So public keys are issued by the certification authority, and the certification authority is the one vouching for the company you send, for example, your credit card number to, using a certification authority. So think of a CA as kind of a passport agency, right? And customs agents, they view this passport, they don't necessarily trust the passport holders, but they do trust the passport agency, like the U.S. government or some other government. So a certificate that a trusted CA issues, it binds then the public key to the identity of the organization, right? And that's who's really trusted. And so you also know that the public key you use is indeed the right public key because you trust the certification authority that issued it. Now, keys also can expire, usually after a couple of years, or revoked or suspended, right? A certificate is, when it's built, assigned this period of validity. And if it's compromised, then the certificate it can't be renewed, right? We want to revoke it. And so it might be suspended too, right? If you leave the company, it's revoked, right? If you have a hardware crash or a private key compromise or other reasons that you would do that. So if it's revoked or expired, right, then you would use a CRL, Certificate Revocation List. The certificate revocation list is going to contain all the revoked or suspended certificates. Applications naturally check the CRL in its normal processes generally. And so suspension of a certificate is if one or more of the parties fails to adhere to an agreement, right? So understanding the certificate structure. So the HTTP Strict Transport Security, or HSTS, that was created about 8 years ago in 2012 as a mechanism, 9 years ago now, as a mechanism for web servers to tell clients that they have secure communications, right? And so it forces all traffic between the web browser and the server to be sent over a secure channel. And this is accomplished through a field sent in the header of the package of each web server response, right? Which requires the browser to force HTTPS traffic on all traffic sent by the web server. So it's an important part of the defense in depth to web security. Now, backing up keys is just as critical as backing up data itself. You should think of it that way. Often companies back up their keys and store them offline in a safe or vault. And so chain of custody records become very important in this process. Microsoft includes features in its servers, OSs, for configuring a server as a CA instead of a third-party certificate authority. But either way, you want to back up the keys. And one way keys are protected on a computer is in the TPM chip. But you still want to back up the keys. Always have key escrow, right? Which is a backup authority, third-party backup authority. And so, in addition, we want to be aware that of the process of attacks, right? So making the source code available is useful because it can create a better product, right? But agencies like the NSA and CIA, they don't release information on all the encryption algorithms they're using, right? So there's this debate going on between making algorithms available or keeping them secret. But the type of attacks that then can be generated are passive attacks. These are tools used for eavesdropping. There can be active attacks to determine the actual secret key used to encrypt the plain text. And the culprit and general public, they generally know the algorithm. Like I said, it's part of the certificate. But and so companies developing encryption algorithms realize the vulnerabilities may be discovered, and software engineers' use of open source code can contribute to that. Now, in continuing with the line of reasoning, types of attacks, there's the old adage that if people if people are at a birthday party, right, and if 23 people in the room, there's a 50% chance that 2 of them will share the same birthday, right? That's kind of weird to me, but it's known in cybersecurity as a birthday attack, right? And so these are used actually to find the hash value for 2 different inputs and reveal any mathematical weakness. So if I see enough hash values in this birthday attack concept, I can figure out the encryption algorithm being used, right? And that's the concept behind it. Mathematical attacks, the properties of the algorithm itself are attacked, right? Using mathematical computations. And the categories of those are ciphertext only, known plain text, chosen plain text, chosen ciphertext, and side channel attacks. You can read more about that in the literature. Because I did want to get to brute force attacks. These require a lot of time and patience. And a brute force attack tries all the possible keys in a key space, right, mathematically. And so it's trying to attempt every possible combination of characters. And so the way to stop a brute force attack, frankly, is just to have a count lockout after 3 tries. It's one of the reasons we do that. So a brute force attack can be launched on any kind of message digest, such as a certificate request, right? And again, count lockout is the solution around that. Now, after birthday attack, we want to discuss man-in-the-middle attack. So in a man-in-the-middle attack, attackers place themselves between the victim and computer and the host computer, and they intercept messages. They're active. It's beyond eavesdropping because they pretend to be the host computer, right? And here I added a picture of what's going on there. You can read that for yourself. SSL and TLS. With the SSL and TLS downgrade attack, the attacker who gets into the initial communications between the web server and the web browser can force a vulnerable server into securely regenerate the encryption being used down to a weaker cipher. So you can actually, because we're trying to pair these things up, you can actually regenerate the encryption down to a weaker cipher to make the web server comply with your computer's needs. And so this is because the web server and the web browser, they're negotiating with each other, right? And so that's a downgrade attack. Now a dictionary attack is, oh, I jumped way ahead. A dictionary attack, I wanted to say, is after the attackers have access to the password file, they can run password cracking program that uses dictionary of known words, right? And so the way to get around this or to avoid a dictionary attack is why we do complex passwords. Okay, so I added a couple extra slides there somehow. A replay attack is also addressed in the literature. This is where the attacker captures the data and attempts to resubmit it. They're replaying it. They're resubmitting the captured data so that the device or the computer or the router thinks it's a legitimate connection in effect. Okay, and so here's a good slide on password cracking for your review. To understand password cracking, this is to conduct this, you first must get the password hash from the system that stores the username or passwords. That pretty much wraps up our conversation. Thank you very much.